Hello, my name is Brenda Price. I'm the Associate State Director for AARP Michigan. Welcome to our virtual program today. We are so glad you are taking the time to join us. Our very special topic today is how to spot and outsmart scammers. You're going to get a few things out of our programming today. We're going to talk about the key messages that scammers call you with so that you are aware of what some of those messages are. You will know them when you hear them. We're going to talk about AARP resources that we have that you can go to independently on your own to find out about scamming that's going on in your community, and also a number for how to reach out to someone at AARP if you feel like you've been a victim of a scam or a fraud. We have an expert today that is going to share that information with you and answer your questions. So please put your questions in the comments section. If you would like to take some time to address something very specific, also put that in the comment section. And we will look at those and bring them up along with questions at the earliest opportunity. So join me as I welcome our expert for today. Greetings, Seth. So
Hey,
nice to see you today.
it's great to be with you, Brenda.
Thank you for joining us. Seth is going to share with us all of the news and information that AARP tracks and accumulates on fraud and scamming. So, to help you better have a clear understanding of what's going on in your community, fraud is a 24/7 opportunity. It's a global economy. Is that correct, Seth?
It absolutely is, and it's accelerating. The pandemic has really created a perfect storm for scammers. It has weaponized what they do and made so many of us more vulnerable than ever. So this is a great time to be having this conversation.
Yes, it is, because thousands of Americans yearly are impacted by scams and fraud. As I said, it's a 24/7 global economy. So, Seth, tell us a little bit about the growth in this economy, this scamming industry since 2019 or in the last year. Give us some indicators of what those numbers look like.
Yeah, as I said before, the pandemic really was the perfect storm. You had a lot of uncertainty. You had scarcity, things like COVID tests or hand sanitizer that was hard to find, and so that created opportunities for scammers to set up websites selling fake miracle cures or selling products that you couldn't find anywhere else, only to find out once you send them your money, those supplies didn't come. And it also created, lifestyle changes. So many more of us are shopping online than we
Mhm.
ever shopped online before. Work from home went from being this thing that a few people did to something that everybody wanted to do. So all of these things sort of created opportunities for scammers to get out there and try to take advantage of us. And we really saw it in the numbers. In 2019 nationwide, for that whole year, the last year before the pandemic, there was just shy of $2 billion in reported losses to fraud, and that was the highest that had ever been recorded by the Federal Trade Commission. Last year, that number was $8.8 billion. It quadrupled in 3 years, and those numbers here in Michigan are the same. In 2019, there was $27 million of Michigan consumer dollars lost to fraud. Last year, $134 million, people's hard-earned money that were lost to these criminals. And so this is an important conversation. There are tools, there's no silver bullet, but there's things that you can do to know what to look out for and how to keep yourself safe.
So, Seth, gift cards play a factor in scams today. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's hard, Brenda, it's hard to stay on top of, there are romance scams, there are social security scams. We're coming up on tax season. There will be IRS scams. It's kind of like whack-a-mole trying to keep on top of all these different scams. However, the one thing we know the criminals want is your money. And they tend to ask you to send your money to them in a few certain ways. So if you know kind of what to look for, what to listen for,
Mhm.
you can kind of be a step ahead of the curve. And one of those things is criminals tend to ask for prepaid gift cards. So you might be thinking that you're talking online with your boss and he needs you to do him a favor or her a favor, and they need you to send $5,000 in prepaid gift cards. Or you could get a call from someone who says they're your grandchild and they're in jail in Mexico and don't tell mom and dad, but we need you to send us $5,000 or $500 in prepaid gift cards. And so when you hear that gift card, that should remind you that no one who has a legitimate business with you is going to ask for payment that way. And the question really is why prepaid gift cards? Well, Brenda, if you think about your neighborhood, it used to be that to get money to a scammer, you had to go to the bank and do a transfer, and then you had to talk to a bank teller who might be trained on what to look out for, and they might be able to stop that scam in progress. But these prepaid gift cards are literally everywhere. They're at the grocery store, they're at the department store, they're at the gas station. So if I'm the criminal, I don't have to coax you into a Western Union to wire money. I just have to get you to go down the street to your local Target, and to go in and find that colorful kiosk and get that Amazon card or that Apple card. And as soon as you buy it, the scammers usually ask you to scratch off the code on the back, send them a picture. And we've talked to, and the money almost goes off right away. We've talked to people who've gotten back out into their cars, realized they made a mistake and gone back in. By that,
Mhm.
the money has already disappeared. Um, I think that's, Brenda, that's one thing that we really just need to think about is that what are the ways that these scammers are asking for money, and how do they get money out of their victims? And like I said, gift cards are one thing. Another big thing that we're seeing is cryptocurrency. So most people think like, I don't understand crypto, I would never buy crypto, I don't even know how to buy crypto. Well, as you would have it, much like these ATMs, or much like the gift cards, there are crypto ATMs all around us, and we don't even know. Um, I'm here in Lansing, and I just did a search on my phone for cryptocurrency ATMs. There are 25 in Lansing, Michigan. They're in gas stations, they're in grocery stores. They look just like any other ATM. And what will happen is the criminal will send you a code, or will send you a QR code of their wallet. They'll get you to this ATM in your grocery store or your gas station. You'll put in your ATM card. You'll scan that QR code, and once that's done, you can give them as much money as in your bank account. And that's one thing where we're really seeing these things are very dangerous. Around $1.5 billion last year was lost just in cryptocurrency related scams. And so that's another thing to be thinking about is when it can be easy to get caught up in these stories. You're worried about your grandchild. You think that there was a suspicious transaction on your bank account, and you want to fix it right away. And so when you get to that point where you hear cryptocurrency, or you hear prepaid gift cards, that's an opportunity for you to say, hey, wait a minute. I listened to this AARP program and said this is a red flag, and it's time for me to hang up the phone.
Well, thank you, Seth. Sorry, I disappeared.
We kept the chains running.
Yeah, identity fraud is such a huge issue. It has even happened to me, and other volunteers. And when we go out to community meetings, we hear a lot about identity fraud. How can people best guard themselves? We get asked for our ID at the doctor's office, different places, and sometimes people just don't know, where should I share my ID, what risk am I at? So talk to us a little bit about identity fraud.
Yeah, thanks, Brenda. This is such an important thing. there's sort of two sides to this coin. There's identity theft and identity fraud. Identity theft is when a criminal gets a hold of your personal information, your name, your social security number, maybe your bank account number or your credit card number. And so it happens in a number of ways. Sometimes they call them phishing attacks. So it's an email asking you to log in. You think it's a legitimate site, but it's not a legitimate site. A lot of times it happens through some of these corporate data breaches that happen. When the criminals get that information, they don't always act on it right away. They hold it. And a lot of times they sell it. They want to wait until your guard is down. And so that's when we flip over the other side of the cord and identity fraud takes place. That's when a criminal uses your personal information against you. And again, talking about the perfect storm of the COVID pandemic, there was a lot of government money available. So all you need to do is a name and an address and a social security number to claim unemployment or to get a PPP loan. So we saw really nationwide this huge spike in government-related fraud, not fraud by the government, but fraud of the government using people's personal information. That's kind of gone away as a lot of those relief programs have gone away. But now it's moved into the credit card space. And we saw last year a huge spike in credit card related fraud, people getting credit cards opened in their name, or people getting charges on their credit card that they didn't authorize. So there's a few things you can do, Brenda. And number one, I always tell people the safest thing to do is just operate under the assumption that my information's already out there. The bad guys and girls got it. And eventually they're going to use it. So what can I do to take care of myself? So first of all, once a year, there are 3 credit agencies that monitor your credit. You can get a free credit report every year. It'll show you every credit card that's opened in your name. Anyone that you don't recognize, you can have closed. So that's a first step each year. And you can space them out. There's 3 credit bureaus. You can get one report from each year. So you could actually request one every 6 months. So do that. There are a lot of credit monitoring services out there that you can sign up for. They'll let you know in real time if someone tries to open up a credit card or take out a car loan in your name. You can even go so far as to set up a credit alert, and that's to call one of the credit agencies and say, I'm suspicious that someone has my personal information. I'd like to set up a credit alert. That actually blocks anybody from opening credit line in your name. So those are a few things you can do. And then sort of on the preventative side, trying to make sure that you don't accidentally or unwittingly give up your information. A lot of the sites, especially sites that you enter financial information in, having what they call 2-factor authentication, which is you have a password and then you also have to get a code texted to your phone. That's extra secure. That's a great tip for anytime you're on a website that has your personal information. And then also just making sure that you're responsible with your password. Don't use the same password on every website. Don't keep them written down in plain sight. There's a lot of tools out there on your phone or on your computer that act as password managers. That's safe too. And then lastly, and this is for people, now that we're starting to travel again and get out and about, sometimes, you can be tempted to kind of do your personal business in the lobby of that hotel. But it's really important to be careful in public Wi-Fi. You don't want to be putting in personal or financial information on your computer in a public internet setting.
That's real good advice, because when you are out and about, it drops right into your device that this free Wi-Fi service is available in the venue that you're in. So to be very cautious about using those free Wi-Fi services.
And it is, if you're just going to surf the internet or, look up something quick, that's fine. If you're going to enter in your credit card information or log on to your bank account, something like that, that's where you want to do that at home on your personal connection.
Okay. So tell us about some of the resources that AARP offers.
Yeah, so we have a lot of things. First, there's so much stuff out there that you don't know. Is this a scam or is this not a scam? I know I do this myself. I'm raising, I think, two of the most paranoid teenagers in America because they hear me have this conversation every single day. And so we have a website, aarp.org/fraud watch network, that you can go to. There are tips, there are articles. I think we have about 70 different fact sheets. So you can say, hey, I got a call from the Social Security Administration. It seems kind of strange. So you can look up that Social Security tip sheet. You can find out if that's legitimate or not. We have a scam tracking map on there where you can actually go in and add in your zip code, and it will tell you if any scams have been reported in your neighborhood. And then the other thing we do, and this is a great service that's brought to people by our outstanding AARP volunteers, but we have a victim support helpline that's staffed Monday through Friday. And if someone has one of those questions, or more importantly, if someone unfortunately has been victimized by a scammer and they need to kind of know how to report it, what the next steps are, that number is 877-908-3360. And I know it's also been scrolling on the screen, but that's really an invaluable resource. Losing money is never good and never pleasant. When it happens to somebody, especially somebody older who might be living by themselves, it can be devastating. It can really not just affect their financial well-being, but their mental well-being as well. And so we want to make sure that those people get the support that they need.
Thank you. So our members and other people can call the AARP hotline toll-free number to discuss any fraudulent activity that may have happened to them. But tell us how important it is to also report these crimes.
Yeah, we took those numbers I gave you before, $8.8 billion. That's shocking. It's just the tip of the iceberg. That's just the small percentage of financial crimes that were reported last year. And so we don't know the scope of the problem if people don't report. And it's hard. A lot of these, as you said in the beginning, Brenda, these are international overseas criminals. They operate like businesses, and they can be hard to get. They can be hard to track. You have to have the cooperation of the government and the country that they reside in. But we can't start if we don't know. And we're working through our advocacy work in all 50 states and in DC. We're working with law enforcement to try to increase the resources, increase the coordination between local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, so more of these bad people go to prison. Because really, this is billions and billions of dollars that are not just being lost from consumers, but in most cases are leaving the country, are leaving our economy and going overseas. And when they go overseas, they don't go to pay for good things. They go to pay for more crime, for a lot of times into terrorism networks, into drug trafficking rings. And so it's really important that we do everything we can do to shut these things down.
Thank you. If you have a question, please post it in the comments section on Facebook, and we will pick up that question. I do have a question about credit card. Every now and then, credit cards statements will have a charge that was not charged by the holder of the credit card. Is that an example of fraud?
Yeah, Brenda, it is. And thanks for bringing it up. It doesn't surprise me that you asked this question, because in Michigan in particular, we've seen a big bump up in credit card related fraud. In fact, in the Federal Trade Commission has about 10 different categories in which identity theft sort of gets categorized into. And credit card fraud was number one for Michigan. 35% of all identity theft complaints last year had to do with credit card fraud. And it's two things. It's like you said, it's either charges on an account being made that weren't authorized, or brand new credit cards opened up in someone else's name. And so, as I mentioned before, those credit monitoring services are good. Making sure that your credit card company has a good fraud monitoring service. A lot of times And I know this has happened to me a couple of times where I've gotten the email from my from my bank to say, did you authorize this charge? That's helped. One of the interesting things, though, is that criminals actually impersonate banks too. So just because you get a text message saying, is this a lot of times that's really successful. A criminal will send you a text saying, did you spend $5,000 for a TV at Best Buy? And you're like, wait, I didn't do that. That's fraudulent. Click this link. And so you think you're calling your credit card company, you were actually calling the scammer. So if you get one of those messages and you think it might be legitimate, even if it is legitimate, don't call the number on the email. Take out your credit card, flip it over, and call that number on the back. And that will get you to the legitimate credit card company. But that's why it's important also, Brenda, to keep an eye on our statements. And we talk about this a lot when we talk about Medicare fraud, because a lot of times fraudulent Medicare charges get put on seniors' bills and they never see it unless they're very diligent about checking their Medicare bill every year. Same goes for credit cards. If you're not online checking it weekly, make sure you're checking those statements monthly when they come, because they don't always get caught by the fraud monitoring. I think sometimes we get in the habit of the bill comes and we pay it and we don't pay any attention. So knowing in real time is important. And one other thing I'll just throw in here, Brenda, especially when shopping online, or, I think the vulnerability is higher online than it is, say, in person. But, we always have a choice of how we pay. If we're not paying in cash, we have a credit card, and a lot of us have a debit card. The difference between the two, they both have fraud protections. But that debit card, once that charge is made, that money comes out of that account. And in order to get it back in your balance, the bank has to basically deal with the claim. Whereas on the credit card, as soon as you report it as suspicious, it gets flagged, it's taken off your bill. You never have to pay it. So you don't have to worry about, okay, I have, there was a $500 charge made on my debit card and it's going to get fixed. But until it gets fixed, I still need to come up with $500, to go to the grocery store to pay the rent. And so that, sometimes you don't have both a credit card or a debit card, so you have to use what you have. But if you have the choice, using the credit card is always going to be the safer option.
Well, Seth, you brought out some very good points, and I want to reinforce what you said, that if you get one of those text messages that says an expenditure has been made on one of your cards and you didn't make that, don't respond to that text. Call the number on the back of your card. That happened to me. And I called it. I thought about it. I've learned so much from you over the past few years. I pulled out my card and I called the number, and the bank shared with me, yes, we did send you the text, but I didn't trust that it was the bank. And it was someone who tried to charge a very minor amount, but they didn't have the PIN number. So just for our audience, just think about each step that you take when you think you are the victim of a fraud or a scam. So just be mindful and probably not react so quickly. Think about what's presented to you and who are the right people that you need to call. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And, these scammers are technically proficient. They're good at technology, and they have gotten really good at making these fake emails and fake text messages look just like the legitimate ones. So no matter what it is, I always say, take out that credit card, flip it over, call the number on the back, that for sure you're going to get to your credit card company. And if it is real, like in your case, Brenda, they'll take care of it. And you'll know that you went the safest route possible.
Yes, they took care of it instantly. Just told me to discard that card and they would send me another one. So it does pay to call the source, to call your bank to try to correct any problem. I also want to take away that you also said to report these crimes. What about sharing them with your family? If you think you've been a victim, is that something that you should share with your family, friends? Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times these, this is one of the weird The interesting but also disturbing things about my job,
Mhm.
I work with all 50 states, so AARP Michigan to AARP Maryland to AARP California. And a lot of times you'll see these scams literally move across the country. And so if you're getting that call, chances are other people in your neighborhood are getting that call. And so letting friends know, letting neighbors know, letting families know is an important step.
Mhm. We have a question about cash apps. There's PayPal, Venmo, lots of opportunities out there to send cash to your children, your family. What do you think about those? Are those safe apps to use? Is the question.
Yeah, that is a great question, Brenda. And I think a lot of times because we're AARP, we tend to talk a lot about scams that affect older people. But the reality is about 40% of all people who report financial crimes to the FTC are under the age of 40 years old. And so credit card, when you look at the number of credit card related scams, it does tend to skew towards the younger folks. And these peer-to-peer um, apps also tend to skew towards the younger people too. The important thing to understand about these peer-to-peer is it was intended for you and I go to lunch, Brenda, and you pick up the check, and I'm gonna Venmo you $15 for my end, and that's or we buy a present for our boss, and everybody's gonna send you 20. That's what they were really set up to be a way to split a bill with friends, with people and so if I don't kick in my $20 when you come into the office, I know I'm gonna hear from Brenda. The reality is these scammers, when you're sending money to people you don't know, there's no accountability there. And so once that money is sent for a product and that product doesn't come, there's no way for you to get that money back. So when using these apps, we always say it's critically important to know the person on the other end and to know it's legitimate, because there really isn't there isn't a recourse. And for a lot of these apps, for some of these apps, there actually isn't even a customer service number that you can call. And so you really are kind of out there on your own. And that's, again, when we go through, there are all kinds of different ways to pay people. Credit cards are definitely the safest when it comes to fraud, but this is an example with these peer-to-peer where there really are no safeguards at all.
Thank you for that response, because they do have a lot of activity amongst young people and staff, and I've come to use a few more of them as a result of interactions. Seth, this has been a wonderful opportunity for us to learn from you in Michigan and beyond. I really appreciate this. Do you have any closing remarks that you'd like to give to the audience?
Yeah, I always think that there's sort of, I always like to do like a 3-word way to think about these opportunities. And you talked about this a little bit before, Brenda. But whenever there's either a good opportunity or a bad opportunity that requires spending money, I always ask people to do 3 things. First, stop what you're doing. Second, think about that opportunity. And then third, verify if it's legitimate or not. So a lot of times what scammers are trying to do, criminals are trying to do, is just get you caught up in the moment. So you just like, I have to fix this problem right now. Click that link, get out my credit card. So first, stop. Second, think, is this legitimate or is this not? And if you think it might be, then go to that trusted source, that number on the back of your credit card, or look up that website on your own and contact them yourself. Taking those 3 steps is going to be a great way to keep yourself safe.
Well, thank you. And I want to thank our audience. If you came into the program midway, this program will continue to be on our AARP Michigan Facebook Live page and also on our YouTube page. So please check it out. Go back and listen to what Seth has offered again and again, because it is worthwhile information. We appreciate our audience. And Seth, I really appreciate having your expertise from our AARP office and our Fraud Watch Network services. Thank you very much for joining us all today. Bye-bye.